Welcome to Telling Tales, the place to get your fiction fix. In each episode we'll have a story for you. Maybe you'll find yourself in a far-flung corner of the world, or deep in the French countryside, or even on the banks of the River Tyne. We'll take you to places where the past and the present merge. Rocks talk, and curry can kill you. Sometimes funny, sometimes dark, but always entertaining. Welcome to Telling Tales. Boulder Dash. The rock had been part of the embankment along the side of the road long before there was a road. Indeed, the rock could remember a time when there was no hillside at all. In the past, the forest filled the whole valley, and the rock remembered hunters chasing the wild pigs and the deer. Once, long, long ago, a huge, hairy creature was chased down by enormous wolves. Large brown bears would rub themselves on the trees, and their cubs loved to roll down the hill or bathe in the stream below. Now the farmers had taken over, and the rock looked out across a narrow valley with many oak trees lining the sides, and cultivated land along the valley floor. It was a long time since the rock last saw a wolf or a bear. From its vantage point, it would watch the eagles and buzzards circling on the thermals above. Wasps and lonely bees would build nests in its cracks. The wind would scour its face, the rain would wash away the dust of the day, and the sun would bring heat in the summer, and even relief in the dark days of winter. Deep below the rock's surface, water had formed caverns, thousands of stalagmites and stalactites marking, like a calendar, the hundreds of thousands of years they took to form. But the rock thought to itself they were beginners compared to it. The rock was born 500 million years ago. It even had a distant, vague memory of its beginning on the floor of a vast ocean of water. But it was so long ago, when the rock tried to recall any details, it was like looking into a mist, where nothing was clear and everything was just out of reach. It had been part of this hillside for at least 20 million years, but it wasn't absolutely certain, as it didn't have any way of measuring time accurately. It marked the days of the passing of the sun and the phases of the moon, and knew the seasons that came and went, but lost count of how many seasons had come and gone. And not that it mattered to the rock. It had many qualities besides its fortitude, its stoicism, and its strength. Its greatest gift was its patience. It sat on the side of the hill, waiting and waiting, never complaining. But it watched and it waited, for it knew one day its destiny would come. Now most rocks never had that honour of a destiny day, and it was unsure how it knew it would happen. But the rock had a feeling deep in its strata that the time would one day come. The wind that sang in the trees would talk to the rock about the great wonders it had seen, the far-away places it had been, and the rock told the wind it would love to wander the world. But it did love its valley, and although it had been looking out on the same valley for 20 million years, it was a never-changing place. One day, after the snow had gone, and wild orchids filled the field, and the hillside wore a cloak of bluebells, the wind whispered to the rock that the storm had spoken to it, and it should prepare because his destiny would arrive soon. The rock was as excited as pre-Cambrian limestone could be, which, to be honest, was not very much at all, but it asked the wind what would happen. And the wind told how a mighty storm was arriving soon, and it would flood the valley, and the trees would walk, and the hillsides would move. And the sun rose that morning like it did every morning, and besides a mist shrouding the valley floor, there was no hint of what the day would bring. Soon dark clouds began to gather, and a chill breeze caused the trees to tremble, and the rain, which was slight at first, was growing more intense, and the stream in the valley below was turning into a river of blood-red mud mixed with broken branches. The sky had darkened, and the wind began to howl, reminding the rock of the long-lost wolves. On the other side of the steep valley terraces, there was a flash of light that smacked one of the trees so hard it leapt into the air, and then, staggering like a drunk, fell down the valley side. The rock could see that the soil had been ripped away, and now the rain was washing it down to the river as well. It saw a gash of white limestone cutting across the hillside like a crooked smile. And then it happened. Another crack of lightning, and part of the hillside collapsed, sending boulders crashing down. The rock had never seen anything more beautiful in its life. Boulders of all shapes and sizes spilled out. First a trickle, then a river of stone ran towards the valley floor and threw itself into the raging water. Boulders, the rock said. Boulders, beautiful boulders, the rock thought. It was all the rock could think, as it didn't have the beginning of a vocabulary to describe the beauty of what it was witnessing. As the rock watched and let the moment sink in, it was suddenly snapped out of its torpor, because somewhere deep inside within the rock strata, a great crack had appeared, followed by a very loud bang, and the rock had felt tremors before and even small earthquakes, but nothing like this. The explosion shook the earth that sat on top of the rock, and a few of the nearest trees cowered in fear. And the wind heard the noise and whispered to the rock, telling it all would be well. It was natural, it was normal. And it told the rock that more cracks would come, and at first there would be moments in between when there was no cracks. But as the time ticked on, cracks would increase, and the gaps would become closer. The wind said, "You will know when your time of destiny arrives." For an hour there was no let-up in the storm. The whole of the valley floor was now a raging torrent of water. Trees bent and shook, and the road was now a river of water, pouring down the hillside from the plateau above. Branches were torn from trees, and they would eventually join the river on its journey of discovery. All this the rock watched in awe-struck wonder as the cracks in its strata ruptured and split, and the rock bore the pain with dogged determination. Again and again the lightning filled the darkness, smashing into the rock and finding its way into the crevices and fissures. Finally the rock ruptured with an enormous explosion as the rock face heaved itself up, then burst forward in a shower of boulders and rubble, crashing down onto the roadside. The road itself was now a torrent of flowing water, and the rock joined the water and tumbled and spun in the road river as it swept its precious cargo of newly born boulders forward. The road suddenly made a left turn, but the rock and the water had other ideas and spilled over the valley sides and plunged down and down towards the river below. Sadly, not all the rocks made it to the river. Some became stuck behind fallen trees or were lodged behind other stones, but most made it to the river, and every boulder, every stone, every tiny piece of gravel was filled with delight as the water embraced the rock and welcomed it into the world and its new life. And the rock felt the glory of the moment like no other. It was moving, it was travelling, a great adventure had begun. And all along the valley floor it travelled, until suddenly it joined another river, and now beside it were more rocks and more boulders, and the rock could see villages and towns passing by. Bridges that had stood for centuries straddling the river were swept away in the flood, and rocks with smooth sides and sharp corners joined in the chaos and the merriment. If the rock had had a voice, it would have cried out with happiness, but instead it contented itself with being in the moment. And now it could see boats and much larger bridges towering over the ever-widening river, and then suddenly the rock could feel a change in the water. It was colder, and the mud colour of the river seemed to be merging into something far older. The memories that were lost in the mist began to clear, images of giant sea creatures. A snail-like creature so much bigger than anything it had seen before darted for a moment out of the mist and then vanished. The beginning, it thought. The time before. Was this my destiny? And now there were no river banks. Giant waves tore the sky above. The rock noticed something else. It was getting smaller. In the turbulence of the water, tiny pieces were drifting off it and settling on the ocean floor. The rock became giddy in the maelstrom of movement. Its thoughts became quiet until they too were no more, and there was nothing of it left, just infinitely small fragments that sank to the bottom of the sea. And soon more fragments joined the others, and the weight of the water pressed it down. And the beginning began again, as it had done many times before. Not always even on this planet. Sometimes it travelled across distant galaxies, crashing into other planets, or was swallowed by holes in the walls of time and space, and so the infinite circle of life continues, and it is everything's destiny. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, then please support my podcast by buying me a coffee. It's £2 a cup. Click the heart logo in the top corner of the website page and donate. If you're on another podcast provider, then check out buymeacoffee.com and search for Jeff Price N3. Thank you. You can contact Telling Tales direct by emailing tellingtalesjeffprice@gmail.com. Until the next time, goodbye.